Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right, happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, no doubt, continues now. This is the broadcast from May the 2nd in the year of our Lord 2025. This is hour 2 of 2. It is a freedom-loving, faith-filled, fantastic. We're taking America back, one heart, one mind, one issue at a time Friday. The good news is we support the supreme law of the land 100%. We need to preserve the nation. To Preserve the Nation is actually a collegiate series put together by Dr. Scott Bradley. It's got DVD lectures, videos, and a workbook and everything else to help you understand how to preserve the nation. It's all available at freedomsrisingsun.com. And the good news is you can go there and check out that collegiate series. It's great for homeschoolers and anybody who wants a detailed education. You can also sign up for the Q&As on the Constitution every Thursday evening. You can have weekly Q&A webinars. Dr. Scott Bradley, and all you got to do is sign up over at freedomsrisingsun.com. Dr. Bradley, welcome back. And how'd the webinar go last night?
Well, it was a, how shall we say, a free-for-all. No, that's a little bit of an overstatement. There's just so much.
There's so many topics. You're right about that.
Absolutely. And I only got through 7 questions in the time that they're being posted right now on BitChute and Rumble, even as we speak.
And so basically, how long was it? About 70 minutes total then?
Oh, it was running pretty close to an hour and a half. I kind of got a little bit carried away last night, and so it was
about
probably
15 minutes a question, right?
About, yep. And that's kind of a frustration to me because I do the long form kind of answers, and BitChute limits me to 15 minutes for any given
when Ayn Rand wrote Atlas Shrugged, Dr. Bradley wrote a book, and I had to reduce it to be about the size of Atlas Shrugged. To be, I'm just joking. I'm just saying he loves to really thoroughly take care of a subject. And I love the detail, though, because you know what? The Founding Fathers had that detail in a lot of the work that they did as well. And so it's really, really important. Why don't you tell me the 7 questions, and I'll pick 1 or 2 that we can kind of vet a little bit.
Okay, let me grab my paperwork here and just see where we are. The very first question. We're going to do that
at first. The second story, just so everybody knows while you're looking that up, what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about Kennedy orders change in vaccine testing. Kamala Harris returns to the stage and says we got a constitutional crisis. So we'll be talking about those things as well if they're not part of the 7.
Okay, well, so the very first one, which was, it could have been an hour and a half easily, was the review of Trump's first 100 days. First question. Spend a few minutes on
Only an hour and a half?
Trump's.
You could talk about that for 10 hours, Doctor.
Absolutely. Second one was the firing of Mike Waltz and his re-nomination in the United Nations. The third one was the rare earth minerals detail that Trump and Zelensky have just inked. Fourth one was the Republicans are going to disintegrate for the 2026 elections based upon what I believe is, and this is kind of overhanging the market a little bit, a media-created image that Trump is dropping in popularity. Here's what I think is happening. I don't want to get too distracted on this until you've heard all the ones that are options. I really, truly believe, FDR occasionally did something right. He said the only fear we have is fear itself. And honestly, I think that everything that's happening right now in the economy is media created, and there's some really good things that are happening too. But at any rate, that was number 4. Number 5, the Democrats have trotted out OAC, Bernie Sanders, and Kamala Harris in their resurgence hopes, and so
what a clown show's my only comment.
It is.
I mean, what a just, oh my heavens.
Are these people going to be the face of the Democrats going forward? So that was question 5. Number 6, the activist judges that have had illegals living in their property or helping them escape. And that has a much bigger issue that activist judges have been involved in, the protection of the illegals, not just the 2 or 3 that we know about now. And then the final question, it was actually, honestly, it was one I threw in myself. It wasn't a question. We were wrapping down, and I just took a few minutes to point out something that kind of harkened back to the firing of Mike Waltz and the Signal chat room that happened with the journalists and stuff. And everybody's, oh, ain't it awful? This is a terrible. Yeah, it is. This was a bunch of frat boys talking that should have known better. I mean, they should know the importance of communication security. Okay, I was going to use some vernacular of the when I was in the military, but communication security is absolutely essential. And everybody's all wringing their hands and jumping up and down, and they think they smell blood if you're against Trump and everything. And the bigger issue, in my opinion, should be on the minds of those that are currently in office is, holy cow, he's starting another blasted war and we haven't even been talked to. I mean, this is absolutely the most onerous issue that ever faces a nation is war. And they're saying, oh, these guys were talking about, targets and time on target and weapons that were going to be used. And, they put military personnel at risk and certainly our equipment and all this kind of stuff. But the bigger question is, what the heck is going on? He's starting a war. And Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 has not been even breathed about. And nobody's talking about that. So anyway, those were the 7 issues. They're going up on BitChute and Rumble right now. And again, they're almost about 15 minutes each for responses. And so the questions come up. I kick them around the block as best I can. And then we put them up. And you know what's really interesting to me? This may sound weird to you, Sam, but maybe you've experienced it somewhat too. I get trolls. That's the only thing I can, attribute it to. People that look at the headlines that I put up, they never listen. They never seek. They never are trying to obtain some kind of understanding. No, they want to blast something before they even know what the issue's about.
Well, and not only do they want to blast it, they want to act like everything that you're saying and doing is wrong, instead of understanding the origins of what you're saying. Okay, a lot of times we say things in our society right now, and when you look at it, you go, that's off the rails. But then when you dig into how it used to be, it's that we're so far off the rails in modern times that what you say seems radical and crazy and extreme, but really we've been moved to an extreme position. And the focus point is common sense, or the focus point is God, family, country related, or the way it used to be for a long time, or the way the founding fathers saw it, or et cetera, et cetera. And so it sounds far out, but it's really that we've been led so far astray that it's actually spot on. And people need to step back and unlearn the propaganda so they can actually be educated to the truth, Doctor.
Well, and you remember, who was it, Jack Nicholson, that said, you can't stand the truth, or something like that, in one of those movies.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It's a great quote.
Yeah, and you know what? They really can't. It's funny. There was a text messaging string that kind of went on longer than it should have the other day that I got involved in, that it didn't matter what logic, reason, intelligence, or any kind of backstory or front story or recognition of risks or anything like that was brought up.
My mind's already made up. Don't disturb me with the truth.
Absolutely. Don't bother me with the truth. I am going to trust until I'm dead. I mean, and we see this constantly. I mean, the idea, Sam, 5 years plus, we have burdened this COVID con thing. And there are people to this day that believe that it was a godsend to get that jab that has killed literally millions of people around the world. And the ongoing problems, the infertility, the autoimmune diseases, the heart inflammation, the turbo cancers. I mean, we could go on and on and on about this, but they will not let go of the fact that they were told it was safe and effective and a godsend. And they will take that to their graves. And honestly, I've seen the graves in our own little community cemetery. The plethora of kind of overages of deaths, if you will. that this thing is, I mean, you say,
and
well,
how young those deaths are, that's unprecedented as well.
Absolutely. Now you say, well, correlation is not causation, all this kind of stuff. There's no proof. And you say, yeah, because nobody will look at it. And this probably brings us to your next story.
The fundamental proof is this, though. It's happening at younger and younger ages more frequently. That's the proof. The question is how and why, maybe, but the proof is there. You don't believe me?
It seems to
Walk
me.
through the graveyard. You'll be whistling through the graveyard if you're not careful, right?
Absolutely.
All right, hang tight. Quick pause. Dr. Scott Bradley, yours truly. I'm going to take his 7 fundamental discussions and twist it a little bit. Do we have a constitutional crisis?
Do you know what is great about America? Ask an Immigrant. Ask an Immigrant is a new podcast dedicated to helping Americans, especially our youth, value, appreciate, and be grateful for the freedoms we have here in America. Join host Lydia Wallace-Nuttall as she interviews immigrants from around the world to discover their inspiring personal stories about why they came to America. To learn more about why America is the most prosperous, greatest country in the world, download the Loving Liberty app or go to lovingliberty.net.
In the medical field, IT security is crucial. Our highly skilled consultants are HIPAA certified and have 20-plus years of experience servicing medical clinics, billing, and supply companies. We offer comprehensive endpoint protection, guarding your computers and servers against all stages of threats. And with our 24/7 monitoring services, you'll never worry about extensive downtime again. Ready to level up your IT support? Call 801-706-6980 today and discover how great IT services can be with managed IT services.
Attention collectors and savvy investors. We are excited to announce a momentous evolution in our journey. Introducing Free Water Coin Company, formerly known as Rust Coin and Gift. This rebranding takes us back to the very roots of where it all began. Free Water, Oregon. It's a tribute to the legacy of Al Rust and a celebration of 3 generations of dedication to excellence in the world of coins and precious gifts. Al, Brian, and Jake Rust standing strong through 64 years of service. Discover a world of exceptional service at Free Water Coin Company, your premier destination for genuine, honest money and precious gifts. Under Brian's expert guidance, Free Water Coin Company, building on the legacy of Rust Coin and Gift, continues its tradition of trust and excellence. Visit us at our Provo, Utah location. Explore our treasures online at freewatercoinco.com or call us at 801-377-1574. Free Water Coin Company, where your future is built one honest coin at a time.
Before the brief interlude of a break, Sam threw out the question, do we have a constitutional crisis? And I think he's getting his cue, if you will. And I don't want to say that Sam's taking a cue from Kamala Harris, but Kamala did talk about
She's
that.
actually jumped on our bandwagon, surprisingly enough, Doctor.
Well, she has. I mean, and literally and truthfully, I don't have any idea if she has any idea. How's that for a twisted
I do.
version?
She doesn't. Just listen to the word salad and you'll get it.
The word salad, the cackling laugh. She's got a better speechwriter, I think, now. But she has expressed a concern about a constitutional crisis. And while we may disagree about the all of the cause and effect and the the nuances of it, I think that there is a major crisis brewing. And we have had, in Trump's first 100 days, I mean, what a change from the Biden bunkered up and hunkered down years. We had no president for 4 years, but the first 100 days, Biden didn't say diddly squat boo. Well, actually, it was just on the cusp of the 100 days. He was invited in to jointly address both houses of Congress. So April 28th sticks in my mind as being, in 2021, the first time the groundhog poked its nose out of the burrow. And that was when Biden came up and talked. Trump has stirred the pot unceasingly in this thing. But a great deal of his activities have brought into question the separation of powers. And the idea
and by
that
the way,
rightly
so.
Yes, it has. But the fact is, if OAC and Bernie and Kamala are the great hope of the Democrat Party. I think most Republicans would say, bring them on, baby. They're going to go into oblivion, because what's happening is they're playing the same old song that they played during the campaign. You know, we're going to attack Trump. He's our enemy. He's hateful. He's spiteful. He's a Nazi. Whatever they want to say, and they're not bringing any cognitive methodology to this thing. Nobody has a brain anymore, and they're doing identity politics, and on top of that, they're the leftist. It will not resonate with traditional Democrats at all. It's just absolutely astonishing to me when the bottom 15% or whatever the number is of the leftist view is who is getting all the attention today. I mean, Kamala's been rejected, even California, I think, based on the fact that she wanted to be governor. Maybe didn't. Maybe she did. I don't know. Who knows? But the fact of the matter is that the people are saying, huh? We just had a dumpster fire going with that Gavin Newsom where we're going to put the word salad in. I don't know. But, yes, we do have a crisis.
Now, here's what's interesting. If you live in partisan politics world, then you can never admit that Kamala's right because, hey, she's the wrong party. Or, hey, I can't admit it because she's a liberal or whatever. We've got to be wise enough in America, civil enough to say, you know what, I agree with her position. We're up against a constitutional crisis. Now, we may disagree on the reasons why we're saying this. She's saying this because an extreme Republican's in office. Okay? That's my opinion, to which I'm entitled. I'm saying there's a constitutional crisis because the checks and balances are a serious violation today. You've got Trump doing everything by executive order, and it's like the three-point shot in the basketball game. You know, you live or die by the three, and that's the problem. We need Congress to codify what President Trump is doing. We need to rein in these judges that think they're more powerful than the president and impeach a few of these clowns and arrest a few of these clowns. We're starting to get there, which is good. But again, we've got to really look at the checks and balances. And then we really got to look at by what authority, okay? We need the checks and balances back in play. And we need to really ask that question, by what authority do you do whatever you're doing? And so, for example, when Trump wants to do this or that, I'm fine as long as he has the authority. And his authority, by the way, is defined in the Supreme Law of the Land contract, Doctor.
Well, it is. And that's the final comments I had in the webinar last night was a big, huh? I mean, the things that are raising eyebrows are the things that, they're questionable and at best and so on in so many ways. But this idea of starting a war as an executive, now we have gotten away from the Constitution so far that most people don't have any idea. Now, I think virtually all of those that sit in office today would never understand Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 is a prime directive, if you will, that Congress has power to declare war. And Congress is sitting on their thumbs, twiddling their thumbs, or whatever you want to say. They haven't done anything. They're regulating refrigeration or whatever, some stupid, idiot regulatory kind of thing that they want to do. But the fact of the matter is, this is absolutely a live and die issue, and we are entering into, we can talk about what is and what isn't in the Ukrainian minerals deal and what this will put the U.S. on the hook for. They're backing into the NATO agreement with just the United States being big brother for them. I mean, the delivery of these kinds of things. We have signed up again to do further surrogate war against Russia through a process that will be paid for with minerals. I mean, we are absolutely absurdly following everything contrary to the original intent of the American founding fathers. And we spin it and we hold our mouth a certain way and suddenly, oh, it's okay. We're doing good, you know. And so, yeah, Kamala says it's a constitutional convention, constitutional crisis, but for different reasons, And we've got some pretty heavy things on our plate right now. And people say, well, no, Trump's doing so many good things. I mean, one of the things, by the way, we talked about in his first 100 days was his phenomenal delivery on the border crisis. I mean, holy Hannah. And that was basically just enforcing the laws that Congress already passed, But this idea of getting rid of the education department or something with the public radio or these are all congressionally enacted kinds of things that are out there that need to have follow-on. And Congress is, like I say, sitting on their thumbs. They don't know what their job is anymore, apparently.
Either they don't know what their job is, or they're so compromised they don't care, or, again, we've played so many games protecting these private special interest groups known as parties to where, unless you're a senior somebody, the majority or minority whip or this or that or speaker or the, senior senator, you take the average person, put them in Congress or in the House or the Senate, they don't really have any authority just because they've been elected to be there. They've created rules in their parties that have literally shut down. And if you don't go along to get along and do a few things, you'll never get enough authority and power to do much. That's all by design and part of the violation that I see across the board. So Kamala's right. We have a constitutional crisis. Checks and balances are at the heart of it. The other thing that's at the heart of it, as I already mentioned, seems to be, look, what authority do you have? And what Congress has done, I think their biggest flaw or fundamental, whatever you want to call it, is that responsibilities they have, they are not doing. They've let the courts or the president do them. So they haven't checked or provided the balance. They haven't insisted on, wait a minute, that's our authority. Keep your hands off of like they're supposed to. And then secondarily, they're really focused on going in virtually penny poor, many of them, or going in super rich because you can get elected. And then what happens is they come out. How do you make $175,000 a year as a member of the House? Go in poor as a church mouse, come out rockin' rich. Okay, we've got to work through that in a meaningful way because they're spending their time, lining their pockets with cash, filthy lucre, while they're derelict in their real elected and sworn-in duty doctor.
Well, you've seen the proposed Pelosi Act. I mean, you take the first initials of the Pelosi Act, and it really is, like the USA, the USA Patriot Act or something. The initials of the act go into the brief name for it, and the Pelosi Act is an intended action that says that those that are in office cannot benefit from the insider trading that they have access to. And Pelosi's a prime example of somebody that went in and is now uber rich, and virtually all of them do this thing.
And above the law, though. They've basically put protections in there to where they're just like, oh, we can do anything in the name of the government, and we have this, quote, carte blanche immunity. That's a lie, too.
Well, it certainly is. And so there's these things that the legislature, House and the Senate, could say, you know what, yeah, this doesn't look too good. We're going to put a stop to this thing. And but here's the thing that really is frustrating. Harry Reid, you might remember that,
that's
Bain
the guy that
Society.
Basically said Richard Mack was a terrorist.
Well, and Harry Reid's office tried to arrest us when we went in there. Well, they wanted us thrown out. They didn't want to arrest us because we wanted them to obey the Constitution, a few years ago when we went in there and tried to talk to them. But the fact of the matter is, this thing with the Bundy Ranch and everything down there in Reed's territory, his family members were the ones that were probably going to benefit from that, trade-off with the people that wanted to use Bundy's Ranch for something else. And so just stopping Harry Reid from benefiting, maybe we ought to look a little broader than that. Because their families...
Amen to that. There is a constitutional crisis. Kamala's right for once, just like a broken clock. But we get it and got to give her credit. She's right on the point. Let's look at it. Let's demand the checks and balances. Let's demand transparency and accountability, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, this is Liberty Roundtable Live. When we come back, we're going to talk about RFK-Jr. We're going to talk about vaccines, which means we're going to talk about the truth, the whooping cough, and a whole lot more. Hang tight. You're listening to the one and only Liberty Roundtable Live.
How would you like to help this program reach more people and earn silver at the same time? Call or text 801-669-2211 for complete details.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. Amid so much hand-wringing over the potential impact of President Trump's tariffs, yet another robust jobs report. The addition of 177,000 jobs last month beat analyst expectations. The unemployment rate holding steady at 4.2%, according to the Labor Department. At every turn, it seems a judge somewhere is ready to thwart the president's plans to deport illegal aliens. In this case, a Trump-appointed jurist says the president cannot cite a wartime law to send some South Americans back home.
The federal judge ruled that the Trump administration exceeded the scope of an 18th century wartime law in using it to deport some Venezuelan migrants, and he's barring the administration from using it. Judge Fernando Rodriguez, who was appointed by the president in his first term, said using the Alien Enemies Act to detain and deport Venezuelan gang members was illegal because the gang's presence in the U.S. was not an invasion. Greg Clugston, the White House.
NPR and PBS may have to hold more of those on-air fundraisers now that President Trump is terminating taxpayer funding for the public broadcasters. If you support them, you'll have to donate. Well, they say everyone loves a parade, and this one, if it comes to pass, figures to be a real doozy.
The U.S. Army has been planning a 250th birthday festival on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. for June 14th, which just happens to coincide with President Trump's 79th birthday. Detailed plans obtained by the AP call for more than 6,600 soldiers, at least 150 vehicles, 50 helicopters, and 7 bands.
Correspondent Ben Thomas. Wall Street celebrating the latest employment report. The Dow is up 420 points, a gain of more than 1%. The Nasdaq ahead 217. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Financing a home, especially in today's market, is one of the biggest decisions you'll make for your family. Work with a mortgage company that puts you first. I do. Work with a lender founded on biblical principles like do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. I do. It's Mike Gallagher for the only mortgage company I've used for almost a decade now when financing or refinancing Fellowship Home Loans. I'm friends with the owners, Mike and Brian. I even have them on my show occasionally. I know the care their team puts into every single customer. I can personally tell you that it's a smooth, stress-free process, and that's due to Fellowship's level of service and expertise that puts you in the right loan for your family and your goals. There's a reason Fellowship Home Loans is flooded with 5-star reviews. Whether purchasing a home or a cash-out refi to consolidate some higher interest debt, you can trust Fellowship Home Loans. Start the process. Make the call. 800-510-MIKE, 800-510-MIKE, 800-510-6453. Fellowship Home Loans, mortgage lending by the book.
Nationwide Mortgage Bankers, Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 819382.
You know where the solution can be found, Mr. President? In churches, in wedding chapels, in maternity wards across the country and around the world. More babies will mean forward-looking adults, the sort we need to tackle long-term, large-scale problems. American babies in particular are likely going to be wealthier, better educated, and more conservation-minded than children raised in still industrializing countries. As economist Tyler Cowen recently wrote, quote, "By having more children, you're making your nation more populous, thus boosting its capacity to solve climate change. The planet does not need for us to think globally and act locally so much as it needs us to think family and act personally. The solution to so many of our problems, at all times and in all places, is to fall in love, get married, and have some kids."
Step into the boots of the American West with Range Magazine, where grit meets grace. This is a front row seat to the stories, struggles, and triumphs of ranchers, farmers, and stewards of the land. From jaw-dropping photography to no-nonsense reporting, Range brings you the untold tales of life on the range. Whether you're a city dweller with a cowboy's heart or living life where the pavement ends, Range speaks to the soul of the West. Subscribe today at rangemagazine.com.
Are you ready to stand up for your community and support your local sheriff? Join the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association and become a vital member of the Sheriff's Citizens Posse. At cspoa.org, we empower citizens like you through weekly webinars, arming you with the knowledge to back your constitutional county sheriff. Together, we can uphold our Constitution and ensure liberty and justice for all. Your community needs you now more than ever.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right, back with you live, Dr. Scott Bradley, freedomsrisingsun.com, and yours truly on your radio. We're talking about RFK Jr., Mr. Kennedy. And Kennedy orders change in vaccine testing. HHS calls for all new vaccines to go through placebo testing. Sorry, I'm thinking of the word here. Placebo testing before they can be released. And people are just on both sides of this. All new vaccines will undergo safety testing in placebo-based trials, controlled trials. They say it's a radical departure, and some are concerned. They say it'll delay vaccines, and the critics say it'll just end vaccines. It'll cost way more. It'll delay them to where they're not useful, da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm going to have this response, which is in the article, to that. And I'm going to then turn it over to Dr. Bradley to start breaking this down in detail. Secretary Kennedy, ladies and gentlemen, is not anti-vaccine. Personally, I wish he was more, right? He is pro-safety, pro-transparency, and pro-accountability. Okay, that's something that we really need to understand here. This isn't a debate about, oh my gosh, it's going to be the end of the world or this or that. Let's just work through this and understand that accountability, transparency, and safety are at the top of the list. Can't we all agree on something to start this out, Doctor?
Well, the thing that people need to understand is that it tests, this proposed approach tests a potential vaccine against a neutral kind of objective, okay? And while I'm not a scientist or in any way, shape, or form, probably people would say I'm totally unqualified to talk about this, and we could discuss that, because I think sometimes using logic, reason, and intelligence is far better than trying to run through the ringer that a lot of people do to make liars out of numbers. But basically, here's what the philosophy has been in recent decades. You don't test a new vaccine for safety against something that you can say, okay, this thing we know won't hurt you at all. It's a sugar pill, if you will. Okay, that's an oversimplification, all right? But we're going to test it against the sugar pill, and we're going to see what kind of deleterious effects, bad side effects you have from this vaccine in comparison to nothing, okay? Something that is totally threatless. Okay, what they're doing historically in recent decades is they test it against another vaccine. Now, here's the problem. All vaccines, by nature of the fact, by definition, by the 1986 vaccine protection law that Reagan signed, they're all dangerous. They all have inherent dangers. And so if you test a new vaccine against another vaccine that's out there that kills people or causes, pancreatitis, or causes cancer, or causes diabetes, or whatever, these are known side effects. And you say, well, look, the bad things that happened with this new one we're testing really aren't a whole bunch worse than this one we're testing it against. It must be perfect. So they put it out as safe and effective. Where, in essence, what they've really done is they've tested it against a known risk, and they're saying, it's no worse than that. And so we keep getting these kind of a snowball effect. I mean, maybe you don't watch TV very often or anything like that, but when you do, I watch news stations oftentimes, okay, when I do watch. Virtually every other commercial on there is somebody hawking some new drug. And it says, don't take this if and if that, and if you have this effect, and blah, blah, blah. Serious side effects, including death, blah, blah, blah. I mean, really and truly, are we okay with this? And so what Kennedy is proposing is a neutral base to go against this thing, not one that's a known carcinogen or some kind of has some kind of bad side effect where one leg gets shorter than the other one when you take it. Okay, I mean, I know I'm being a little facetious here, but the fact of the matter is we're not giving an honest approach to this, and the placebo and these control kind of groups and everything like that have been eliminated. In fact, when they did the COVID jab, what came out of that, they immediately vaccinated the quote-unquote control group after they got doing this 30-day test or 15-day test or whatever they did. And so there is no control group. So we can look over long terms and say, you know what? In comparison to the control group, we had 1,000% increase of this cancer or that heart problem or this autoimmune disease or this fertility problem, which is all we know
need
today.
A baseline to test, and here's the problem with those. Here's the problem with those who say this is unprecedented. We can't do this. This is dangerous. It'll delay vaccines, etc. Let me explain to people how they need to think about this. Now you can say, Sam, that's just your opinion. Okay, fine, but think about my logic here, and tell me if this makes sense. To me, everything is a risk-reward analysis. And number one, everybody should be free to make that risk-reward analysis on their own terms with their own understanding. And our goal needs to be transparency and accountability. And our goal needs to be documented benefits. And if you can't document those benefits, you cannot weigh the risk-reward of different actions because you don't know. And so we need to document this. That's the transparency part. Accountability. When things go wrong, the vaccine companies need to be accountable, not the poor taxpayers. Okay? And when it comes to safety, we need to be able to provide information to the American people so they can make their own risk-reward analysis, Doctor. I'm not just trying to express opinions here. How logical is that reality check, that discussion?
Well, here's a lot of the people that are, ain't it awful? We're going to kill the vaccine industry. You know what? Maybe the risks are so high that when people really understood them, they may say, that ain't for me or my family.
And
as for me and my house.
And we need that transparency to decide that. That's my whole point.
That's point number one in the Nuremberg trials when they came up with the Nuremberg Code. There has to be informed consent. And when you look at what came out with the COVID jabs, and you say, let me see the scam sheet that comes with it. I call them scam sheets. But it's a risk sheet that you can go over and analyze it. It's a big sheet folded up inside of every one of the little vial boxes and everything like that. They were blank. And this idea that, they tested...
they didn't do anything. They committed fraud, and they need to be in prison. And that's kind of what we're seeing today with a lot of the COVID things. Now they're saying, my gosh, the COVID booster, we won't be able to get that out fast enough to be, effective. And I mean, fine. You should have done your studies before, because now we're 5 years into this thing. You would start to collect and have data to look to. But because of the choice they made and because of what we've done and this psychotic idea, we don't have that data. We should have and could have, and we need to, but we don't. So you can't even make that analysis anymore, right?
No,
that's the problem he's trying to correct.
Here's the deal. What I just said moments before we got on this little, expansion of it, they did not allow a control group to be continued to be identified. They immediately vaccinated the control group. So they lost all of the, if this, then that, let's do a comparison. And so when they say to us, there's no proof of this, obviously, they completely obfuscated and covered it up and deep-sixed it. They wanted nobody to be able to look at any of the tests they did, as poor as they were, for 75 years.
But the standard is not the proof of the vaccine. The standard is safe and effective. And if you can't prove it to be safe and effective, it should be DOA. See, the standard isn't, hey, we've shot up 1,000 people and we don't see anything bad yet. That isn't the proof. The proof is a safety standard where you can document evidence that, hey, it's doing more good than harm. I mean, isn't the physician's creed, first do no harm? We need to adopt that in this vaccine industry here and say, hey, wait a minute, hold on. You've got to prove that it's safe and effective enough for people to be able to make that choice. And then you need to leave it to people to, as they review it, decide that you're right. And if they've really got safe and effective data, documentation, they're going to win the argument all day long. But if they don't, they're not. Can't we leave it to that reality check, that clear of a discussion? But no, they got to muddle it in this complicated stuff you can't understand. What about first do no harm, doctor?
Well, this is the argument that I think Kennedy's starting to try and present.
Amen.
And the fact of the matter is that, basically, and I'm overstating this a little bit, but I want to make a point. If you didn't die within 15 minutes of getting the jab, it's safe and effective. Do you know there's 15-year outcomes that ultimately and finally will have to be documented? And their stuff, what was it, Vioxx, I think, that they came out with. They said it was all FDA approved, blah, blah, blah. And after a period of years, they discovered that heart failure was a very real outcome with this. And so they took that product off the market. But the fact is, today, with the jab, for example, and
Go ahead
any
and
of these
skip the break.
vaccines.
Go ahead. Continue, sir.
With any of these vaccines, nowadays, if you didn't do those long-term, safety studies, it doesn't matter to the industry. They're covered. The taxpayers got their butt. They're not going to stand up. And what needs to happen is people need to be accountable for their actions. People don't want to be anymore. I mean, they want to be held safe, wrapped in a security blanket their whole lives. You can't be and live a life. That's a nature of the beast. There's risk in life, but we need to be able to do our own assessments. And that Nuremberg Code, the very first point, informed consent. You guys cannot stand behind this taxpayer-provided legal shield and do whatever you darn well please and kill literally millions of people, according to some studies. Millions of people. I mean, like maybe 10 times as many people as deaths were attributed to the actual COVID disease. And people have just got to recognize Kennedy's trying to bring some honesty to this program, and the people that are fighting him.
Good for him for doing that. Now, I want to go back to the first do no harm statement just for a minute, because they say, hey, that's not really part of the oath. Some say that it is. Some say it's not. Some say the wording's not right. Some say the origins are different. But then they say this first do no harm thing is a good idea, but in practicality, it's not real. If you first said first do no harm, nobody would ever do surgery. Nobody would ever this. Nobody would ever that. Okay, if you take the phrase 100% literally, that might be true. But to me, the first do no harm is not meant to be a literal statement, okay, in the physical. Because, hey, if you cut somebody open, you're doing harm, right? Okay, we can debate that all day long. But at the end of the day, really what it means is, let's not think we're God. Let's do our very best to be very cautious and to analyze and say, when am I doing good versus when might I be doing it for money versus when might I be doing it because I was taught to or because that's the way it's always been done. Or it's really designed to help the physician think, why are you here? What is your goal? Is your goal to preserve life? Is your goal to create quality of life opportunities? Is your goal to... And so when you say first do no harm, it's really a thought exercise of your motivations, of your intentions, of what you know, and admitting what you don't know. To me, that's really the purpose of the phrase. It's not to say, hey, first do no harm. Otherwise, I mean, you might even harm somebody driving down the road to get to the doctor's office. So you can't drive your car. See, we can get crazy with the discussion. Or we can, and this is the point, or we can look back at our history like the founding fathers to preserve the nation. Or this first do no harm for the doctor's creed, or this idea of Dr. Kennedy to have these placebo studies, et cetera, and document what we're doing, thinking that safety, right? Thinking that transparency, thinking that accountability should be at the top of the list. And the first do no harm just has that idea in mind to say, let's proceed slowly. We're not God. Let's make sure we're not making the problem worse, shall we? Isn't it that kind of a discussion, Doctor?
Well, absolutely. And people may already understand this about me. I have these little aphorisms that are I have in front of me all the time, like about seeking truth and stuff like that.
He writes them faster than I can talk, people, just so you know.
Okay, so anyway, here's one that I have in front of me all the time.
Okay.
We are apt to shut our eyes against the painful truth. For my part, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. That was Patrick Henry in March of 1775.
See, amen, though. I mean, think about that idea. It's very logical, just like what I'm saying. We can go first do no harm, and we can dissect it and argue about it and waste time, or we can say, what was the intent of the statement? And that's what we need to do with the Constitution, with the checks and balances, with the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, with the Declaration of Independence. And, if you look at Scripture, you can make it say anything you want to any time almost. But if you try to think of the context of who wrote it, why it was written, what it means, what it's intended, pretty soon you come to a pretty common sense position that says, hey, if I'm a doctor I don't want to do any harm to anybody. I want to make sure that I'm doing right. Now, I can't be perfect at it, but I could certainly slow down and hesitate, find out what my motivations are, do all these things. I can go through this process to where, you know what, I'm a good doctor, not because I'm great, but because I know my limitations, because I assess where we really are and say, what's best in this individual case? Not for my wallet or my speedboat or whatever, or my nice car, but what's really best for the patient? Can I really always keep that balance in mind to the best of my ability? And I think it's true in almost every aspect of our life, including looking back at the founders for solutions as we look ahead, Doctor.
Well, you know, you bring up something. It's kind of a cutesy little thing. It's not always true, and certainly, hopefully not true. But, you know, there's a kind of another aphorism that says, what's the difference between God and a doctor? And the answer is, God doesn't think he's a doctor. We get some pretty big egos that are in that thing. But going back to that Patrick Henry statement, though.
Well, and to me, the other thing is God will do no harm.
Right. But here's the deal. This goes back to that text exchange that I said I'd been in yesterday that was a little too long. We're apt to shut our eyes against a painful truth. People don't or can't take the truth. But I want to know the whole truth. I want to know the worst. I want to be able to provide for it using the wisdom God has given me. So
Amen.
I don't want to shut my eyes. I want to have that understanding. Now, with the way we're doing it right now with the FDA and the vaccines and everything like that, their testing process is flawed. It's flawed.
And Bobby Kennedy, hopefully we can help him fix it. Now, Barbara Lowe Fisher is the founder of NVIC. That's the National Vaccine Information Center. NVIC.org if you want to learn more. But here's an interesting relationship to the whole truth on this thing. The truth about whooping cough in the U.S. That's the headline of her article. The truth about whooping cough in the United States. And here's what she says. This is very fascinating. The truth is that the child or the adult sitting next to you, say in the bus, classroom, movie theater, doctor's office, wherever, who has a, quote, little cough or a no cough at all, maybe, well, could be infected with pertussis whooping cough, right? Even though he or she has gotten every federally recommended dose of pertussis vaccine they can get. That's the truth. And when that's in mind, doctor, you got to really say, what are the pros and cons? How can we transparently tell what we know? How can we know more, right? The more knowledge we have, the wiser decision-making we can make. I just don't understand how anybody can oppose this is what's so fascinating to me. But they're off on all these goofy rants. Hey, first do no harm means you can't do anything because, and they have everybody paralyzed or whatever. Look, this is very simple. It doesn't matter where somebody is. You can't know if they're infected, number one. And number two, you can't count on because they're vaccinated, it won't be a problem. It can and it will. And people really learned that lesson in COVID, didn't they?
Well, here's the issue. We live in a world of risk, and we do our best to do what we can. But what we have been doing lately, there's pretty strong evidence that the different vaccines we put out shed on people. There's things that there's by guess and by golly. When they put the flu shot out, they're doing their best guess at what they think this latest flu the vaccine needs to be to counter the what's out there. And I think Bobby Kennedy is trying to come to a closure that I think we all need to think about. Sometimes environmental factors, whether it's the poisons we're putting on the ground to grow our crops, the stuff we're putting in our processed food, the air we're breathing, the chemtrails. By the way, he did something that was rather telling, in my opinion, about the chemtrails the other day.
It's
all
huge
of these
what he did.
It did.
By the way, remind me on Monday, let's break that down more, because that's a great point.
It is, but here's the deal. People I have known for decades have poo-pooed that thing, and here's Bobby Kennedy that's admitting on Dr. Phil the other day. He said, well, my organization is not doing the chemtrails. It's like, so who is, kind of thing.
Well, and that is the point. And we, the people, need to follow up on those nuggets of truth they give us, because if he knows he has a backing, he can run with it.
And DARPA, by the way, is who he suggested has as much to do with that. But at any rate.
And I think he's right on.
the fact of the matter is that
there are UFOs and there are chemtrails, people. They lied about both of them.
But the moon landing and everything else. But the fact of the matter is, if we start saying, I am going to eliminate these risks in my life, the highly processed food chemicals and flavoring is all they are, basically. I'm going to go back to as close to the farm as I can. But if the farmer's using Roundup, you have to say, well, what's my corn got in it? What are my corn chips that I ate at the Mexican restaurant tonight when my wife and I go out for dinner? What is in the corn chips? Because it's a DNA modified corn that we have, okay? I mean, all of these kinds of things. And I think Bobby Kennedy's saying, let's look at some of these things realistically and honestly, rather than just closing our eyes, as Patrick Henry said, closing our eyes against the painful truth. Let's face them, and let's make our own decisions. If you and your family want to eat Cheetos all day long, it's your choice. And I'm not going to try and take that away. But if my family thinks there's something bad in some, it lacks nutrition, it doesn't have the right chemicals in it, it has too many chemicals in it, I want to be able to have that information so I can make my choices. I want to be a free, independent human being, just like God intended me to be.
Imagine that. I think we ought to do a hashtag, and it would be Back Bobby. What do you say?
Somebody ought to put that out. If that is not out there already, I'd be shocked. I mean, there's a lot of people that are saying, he's doing some things. But you know what? The big pharma companies, they have enough money to buy trolls right and left, up and down, sideways, that are going to come out and, ain't it awfuls, you do this, you're going to slow down this. Maybe some of the programs need to be slowed down. Somebody needs to take a deep dive. Yeah, or shut down. And let's evaluate it. And then let's make some decisions based upon God-given intelligence rather than a big enough bank account to buy any kind of opinion you want. Let's find the truth. Let's not close our eyes to it. I mean, I was shocked in this conversation. I keep coming back to it. I am sorry. I am absolutely shocked at how many people do not want to be responsible for their own choices. It's
shocking.
Blows my mind.
That blows my mind. And the problem is, when you try to explain or talk, they're just like, la, la, la. I don't even want to learn or know. I don't care. It's insane. But we got to back Bobby, people. And we're not backing Bobby because I agree with him on everything. We're backing Bobby because he's bringing common sense, logic, and solutions to the table. And that's what I like about it. Hey, what is causing the autism? We can argue about if it's vaccinated related or not. I think it's vax related. But even if it's not, why don't we dig in and find out what's causing it? Wouldn't that be a smart thing to do? They can't even agree on that, doctor.
No, it's like la, 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 la. They got their fingers in their ears, and the pharma company is buying this, I guarantee. They have got, every physician, there's got to be a few exceptions, I know, but virtually every physician that comes through the medical practice of whatever they're putting them through, the indoctrination mill, comes out with a full inoculation against looking at anything other than the
then the vaccine companies get rich, everybody gets jabbed, and the taxpayers pay for it all, and there's no transparency of any kind. That's what they want. It's a clown show. It's got to stop, and the only way it's going to stop is if we the people get in the game. We want peaceful, restorative solutions on the table. That's why we follow the Prince of Peace. We got to turn to God Almighty and do our very best. Thank Tim Starks for the first hour. Great stuff. Thank Dr. Bradley for both hours. freedomsrisingsun.com. Check it out. Get involved in the solutions today. This broadcast is brought to you by lovingliberty.net, our nationally syndicated radio network. Download the iPhone app, the Android app, and listen to your heart's content. It's all free. Or you can simply listen online at lovingliberty.net. Check out my videos at libertyroundtable.com. For Dr. Scott Bradley, Tim Starks, yours truly, we the people, along with the grace of the Almighty, can and will restore our grand old republic. Please get involved, make it a great day, and choose the right, will you? God save our republic.